Welcome, everyone. I usually wait a couple of minutes after one in case people are scampering down for their lunch hour, but that's okay. Welcome to the Friends of the Allport talk. Can't you hear me, Hughes? Okay, welcome to the Friends of the Allport talk. My name's Amanda Vojtovic, and I'm the president of the Friends of the Allport. I begin today by acknowledging the Muanina people, traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Now, the FOTA committee began, prior to COVID, 2 projects to enhance the experience of this library. I won't go into my reasons for doing that, except to say that I once visited the library at Chantilly in France, and it is glorious. It's got rows of books, all the same colour next to each other, of course. I bet they're not Dewey Decimal, with lights shining on them, the gold spines sticking out, and it's got a little mezzanine floor, and it's such a beautiful space. And I thought, okay, let me go back. What can we do? What can we do in here? Okay, forget that. The first of our projects to be launched today is the provision of some interpretation sheets for each book cabinet, offering information about books of interest to be found in the cabinets. We start today with 7, and we hope that we will be able to add to them. Tony Marshall is the author of said sheets and presenter of this material. Tony was for more than 20 years the State Library's Senior Librarian, Heritage Collections, working especially but not only with the Allport. In that time, and since his retirement, he has written and presented numerous papers about the collections and the collectors who established them. We're looking forward to hearing from him. Some of you may well have been here on one of our occasions, one of our FOTA occasions, when we were allowed to see actual books out of the shelves on tables, and Tony turned the pages over for us, which was really exciting. We love that. I have dreamed about sneaking in here and opening a cabinet, taking out a book. Anyway, that's my background to trying to make the library more inviting and interesting. And I started out by suggesting one of those Woolworths-style catalogues hanging on a string. No, said everybody. So we have graduated to what you will see today. As one of the many discussions around how we might discover more about the Allport collection, a suggestion was made that we have a session helping us to understand and utilise the library online catalogue. Again, my own experience, I find it very arcane and I'm really hopeless at finding things in it. Leisha Owen will reveal the keys to finding stuff in the catalogue. Leisha is currently a curator here at the Allport Library and Museum of Fine Arts, but you mightn't know she has a Bachelor of Fine Arts, Honours in Painting from UTAS, and has worked as a librarian and artist for many years. I introduce, first of all, Tony Marshall.
Thank you, Amanda. An inordinately long time ago, the committee of the Friends of the Allport decided that something should be done to tell visitors about the Allport Library. I was volunteered for the task, and at last here we are with something to show. Libraries, especially ones which contain largely rare books, are not easy for the visitor to understand or appreciate. Although books are inherently fairly sturdy, they can be or can become fragile. They can be damaged by exposure to strong light. Being often relatively small and portable, and sometimes remarkably valuable, they need to be housed securely. And a lot of them just look the same, shelf after shelf of anonymous leather bindings. Hence the room we're in now, dimly lit and surrounded by locked cabinets. Who could blame the casual visitor poking their head into the library and thinking, nothing to see here? Before I tell you about the first products of the task which the Friends set themselves, I should say a little bit about the Allport Library. Its history falls into 4 or 5 fairly distinct periods, beginning with the earlier members of the Allport family, who acquired and used books, gave and received books as presents, won books as prizes for academic achievements, and even acted as publishers' agents, as Morton Allport did in the 19th century for the artist John Gould. Several of these works from family hands have remained in the collection or have found their way into it more recently. But in 1899, Cecil Alport, who was effectively the head of the family after his grandfather Joseph and his father Morton both died in the late 1870s, Cecil decided to become a collector of books and works of art. He assembled a formidable collection, concentrating on Australian and especially Tasmanian history, description, exploration, and travel. When he died in 1927, the collection was inherited by his only surviving son, Henry, who continued to build it. Cecil and Henry acquired their treasures largely from dealers in England and Europe, though local sources such as the Tasmanian photographer and antiquarian J.W. Beattie were also important. When Henry died in 1965, he bequeathed his collection, library, works of art, photographs and decorative arts to the state of Tasmania, and it came under the State Library's management. Successive librarians and curators, beginning with Geoffrey Stilwell, continued to build the collection in all of its aspects, using the funds which were part of Henry's bequest. The library bought books widely from dealers and at the many Australian auctions which disposed landmark Australian collections in the 1970s and 80s. Dealers in rare books, both generalists such as Horden House in Sydney and more focused such as Andrew Isles, who specialises in natural history books, were and still are important in building the collection. What I decided to do, as Amanda has said, was to select individual books and groups of books and create a panel containing a short piece of text with an appropriate illustration. There are 7 of these panels around the library, but there's no reason why more should not be created. So if you have any suggestions, ... In the next few minutes, I'm going to expand on the text I've written and show you some additional images. The items I've selected are on display for today only in the 2 cases near either side of the door. To begin my task, I went to the start of the library, not chronologically, but to the beginning of the Dewey Decimal Classification, by which most of the library is arranged. Dewey begins with books about books and books about libraries and collections. Librarians and collectors seek out these sorts of publications to help them build their collections, to tell them more about what they already have, and sometimes simply because they are desirable objects in themselves. My first choice was Sir John Alexander Ferguson's Bibliography of Australia. This massive work aimed, with a few exclusions, to list and describe every book published in or about Australia from 1784 to 1900. Ferguson lived in Sydney, but corresponded with and visited helpers in several states. He was especially grateful, as you can see from what's on the screen, to the Tasmanian collectors to whom he dedicated his 4th volume. But Ferguson's bibliography is of continuing usefulness to the staff, so it lives in the librarian's office. Instead, I chose this catalogue of Australasian books, which you can barely see there. It's a catalogue of Australasian books published in 1899 by the London bookseller Francis Edwards. Compiled by the distinguished Australian bookseller, collector and bibliographer E.A. Petherick, it was both a sale catalogue and the first really substantial attempt at an Australian bibliography. This copy had belonged to J.W. Beattie, who you probably know best as a photographer, but who was also a collector and dealer, who supplied both items and advice to Cecil and Henry Allport, William Crowther and other Tasmanian collectors. This copy is in pristine condition, but Sir William Crowther's copy is a battered and annotated affair that went with him everywhere when he was visiting bookshops. To round off the bibliography section, here are a couple of the odder items in the collection. On the left, a bibliography of literature printed about Captain Cook, printed in Sweden before 1819, which is a bit abstruse, and Captain William Bligh and Where to Find Him, published in London in 1976, I think, both fairly recondite. I'm now going to move on to Professor E. Morris's Austral English, which was published in 1898. It was the first dictionary of Australian English. It's not an uncommon book, but the copy in the Allport Library is very special. It belonged to Dr. Lonsdale Andrew Holden, who in his own way was rather special. And again, I apologise for the size of this. I hope they might be able to fill the screen, but technology has defeated us. After his medical training in London, Lonsdale Holden made his way via Ceylon and Melbourne to Hobart, where in 1877 he was appointed assistant house surgeon at the Hobart Hospital. After 8 years' service, he resigned and returned to England, but almost immediately came back to Tasmania, where in 1886 he settled at Stanley and became the local doctor. He moved to Bellerive in 1894, where he lived and worked until 1908, when he and his family finally returned to England. Among several significant things which happened while the Holden family were at Stanley, two are relevant to the book which I'm talking about. E. Morris, who was Professor of English at the University of Melbourne, began his collection of Australianisms and called nationally for contributions. Initially, it was on behalf of James Murray, the editor of the Oxford English Dictionary, but eventually it turned into Morris's own dictionary. And the other thing that happened was that Dr. Holden's wife taught herself bookbinding. When Austral English was published in 1898, it bore a generous acknowledgement to Dr. Holden, who was perhaps my most valuable correspondent. After I had failed in one or two quarters to enlist Tasmanian sympathy, he came to the rescue and gave me much help on Tasmanian words, especially on the flora and the birds, also on Queensland flora and on the whole subject of fishes. Austral English is a hefty book of more than 500 pages. Mrs. Holden took apart her husband's copy, interleaved it with blank sheets between the pages, and rebound it in 2 volumes. Unfortunately, in the process, some of the pages he had annotated were trimmed a little closely. Dr. Holden continued to add corrections, additions, and newspaper cuttings for several years. Eventually, when leaving Tasmania in 1908, he sold the volumes to Cecil Alport, writing to him, "I send you here the 2 volumes. Glad they are to have a place in their collection of Australian books, the collection of a typical Hobart man, the collection of a friend. Such as they are, from binding to substance, print and manuscript, they are considerably the work of my hand and of my house. I decided to sell them with regret. Having sold to you, the regret passes. I leave them in a higher station than they deserve." There are about 125 annotations in the 2 volumes, which are in the display case over there. Here are a couple. This one deals at length with the expression Buckley's chance. So he's written some stuff in from other sources and pasted in a newspaper cutting. This one suggests that for the verb to coast, it's used by the modern bicyclist as perhaps an Australian origin. Oops. And this one discusses the verb to salt. And Dr. Holden says, "This is the technical Australian verb used to denote the practice of giving a mine, generally a gold mine, a fictitious value by introducing metals or ores which were not there deposited by nature. This is a species of fraud highly developed in Australasia." We now move on to something completely different, which is popular fiction in the Allport collection, which might sound like an anachronism. Although Henry Allport acquired a few novels directly concerning historical themes, his collection was fairly determinedly focused on serious stuff. But his wife, Claudine Miriam Hawker, who was known as Daisy, was more interested in popular novels of the day. And a good number of those have survived in the collection. Works by Neville Shute, Howard Spring, Vicky Baum, Francis Parkinson Keyes and others. And to distinguish them among the shelves of leather bindings in this room, most of them still have their colourful dust wrappers, though some of them are a bit battered. And she must have been especially keen on, oh, it's not there, on A Town Like Alice, which is illustrated on the previous slide. One of the absolute treasures of the Allport collection is William Bulow Gould's Sketchbook of Fishes. This volume of 36 watercolours of the fishes of Macquarie Harbour, made in the late 1820s, and there's a facsimile copy on the lectern over here, which you're welcome to look at. It would inspire the Tasmanian author Richard Flanagan to write his novel, Gould's Book of Fish, which was published in 2001. The publishers were very keen to use some of Gould's original sketches in the design of the book and its dust wrappers. The library agreed on condition that we would receive a copy of each edition, of which there have been several. We still don't have them all, but those we do have brighten the shelves, just as Daisy Allport's preferred reading does. And we have there, I think, Australian, Spanish, talking book, Armenian, English perhaps, a more recent paperback, Greek, and I think the American edition on the end, all of which in one way or another use the images from Gould's sketchbook. To complete the circle, on the 1st of April 2011, Richard Flanagan presented the State Library with a certificate inscribing the original sketchbook of fishes on the UNESCO Australian Memory of the World Register. Jules Sébastien César Dumont d'Urville was a giant of French discovery, exploration and science in the first half of the 19th century. He undertook 3 expeditions to the Pacific, the first under Duperrey's command in 1822 to 25 and 2 under his own command. From 1826 to 29, he commanded the voyage of the Astrolabe, during which he visited Australia, New Zealand and many of the Pacific Islands. Allport has excellent holdings of the atlases from the published account of this voyage. They are largely of images rather than of maps, and they include several of Van Diemen's Land, such as, just need to leap forward a bit, such as this view of Newtown. In 1837, Dumont d'Urville set sail again in the Astrolabe, but this time accompanied by another ship called the Zélé. His prime objective was Antarctica, specifically the South Magnetic Pole, but included visits to Australia, New Zealand, Chile, the East Indies and the Cape of Good Hope. There were many difficulties along the way, and there's a monument which you might know at the Cornelian Bay Cemetery, which memorialises several members of the party who died of illness along the way. Dumont d'Urville returned to France in November 1840, where he worked on writing the report of the expedition. But on the 8th of May 1842, he and his family were killed in the first railway disaster in France, known as the Versailles Railway accident. They were returning to Paris from public celebrations in the gardens at Versailles when the train derailed and caught fire. It was until then the practice to lock passengers into their compartments. The account of the expedition is massive. It comprises 23 text volumes, which are on the shelf here, bound in blue. An account of the voyage in 10 volumes, plus volumes on anthropology, botany, geology, zoology, hydrography, and physical geography, and 7 atlases. Allport holds the lot. The text volumes bound in light blue papered boards, again, like Mrs. Allport's fiction, stand out proudly among the miles of leather in the library. The atlases are difficult to store, but the Allport copies are in fact unbound portfolios, which means that the individual plates can be and have been displayed. And I've already shown you a view from the first voyage. Similarly, there are lots of views from the second voyage which have been displayed. there's one of the views from the second voyage of the port at Hobart. The next choice is to some extent a personal one, but I think it's a very worthy one. Many of you will remember Dan Sprod. I do, because when I came to Hobart in 1990 to work at the State Library, he was very welcoming. At the end of my first week here, I found myself having lunch at Knockwood's with Dan and Clive Tilsley and Dennis Abbott, CSIRO librarian. Following service in the Navy during the Second World War, Dan studied at the University of Adelaide and then had a career with the National Library of Australia, both in Canberra and in New York, followed by a 10-year term as the University Librarian here in Hobart, from which he retired in 1976. In 1978, he established the Blubberhead Press. Although he retired as publisher in 2000, he continued to be closely involved with the press's work until 2009. In those 31 years, the press published 33 works, 5 of them with Dan's name on the title page as author or editor. While some Blubberhead Press books were found paper-bound and relatively utilitarian, most of them were finally produced hardbound books in limited editions. It was Dan's practice to have 25 copies of each of these limited edition books bound in half leather for the author and for special sales, and the Allport Library has all of these special bindings. There are a couple of them in the display case over here. Dan's last book was Van Diemen's Land Revealed, published in 2009. In a nice circularity, it includes a facsimile reproduction of one of the rarest and most valuable items in the Allport collection, Matthew Flinders' Observations on the Coast of Van Diemen's Land, which was published in 1801. Now we move on to something completely different. Well, everything's different in this collection. Sir William Jardine, a Scottish baronet, the 7th is in his line, was born in 1800. Although he studied medicine, he devoted his life to the study and promotion of natural history. His principal interest was ornithology, but he also studied ichthyology, that's fish, botany and geology, and established a remarkably fine library and museum which included more than 6,000 species of birds alone. He's probably best known for the 40 volumes of the Naturalist's Library, which he edited, largely wrote, and published between 1833 and 1866. Each of these little books included a biographical sketch of a notable naturalist, a detailed study of its designated subject, and 30 or more engraved and coloured illustrations. This image is pinched from the Sydney book dealer Horden House's website, but it looks very much like the Allport set in condition and binding. The scope of the series is extraordinary. There are 14 volumes on birds, 13 on mammals, 7 on insects, and 6 on fish. There is 1 volume specifically on Australian marsupials and many Australian references scattered in the other volumes. Jardine himself wrote the text of at least 15 of the volumes, mainly on birds, but also on bees, mammals, and whales. So from the smallest to the biggest, as well as many, if not most, of the biographical articles. The illustrations were by a range of artists, principally the Scottish-born James Stewart. Some authors did their own illustrations, such as William Swainson on some of the birds, and Colonel Charles Hamilton Smith, who did the dogs and horses. The volumes on parrots and pigeons are illustrated by Edward Lear, notable as an ornithological artist as well as a writer of comic verse. Here are a couple of his pigeons on the left and in the middle, and Patagonian parrot on the right. All of the illustrations, that nearly 1,300 of them, were engraved by William Home Lizards, who happened to be Sir William Jardine's brother-in-law. The lovely set of the Naturalist's Library in the Allport collection, which is in the right hand of the bookcase directly opposite the library door, was owned by one Robert Taylor of Park Place in York. Judging from the ownership inscriptions, he seems to have acquired them volume by volume, possibly as each one was published. More than that, we know nothing. Finally, Curtis Botanical Magazine. Robert William Lawrence was the son of William Effingham Lawrence, a landowner who settled in Van Diemen's Land in 1822. By the time of William's death, in 1841, he was one of the largest and wealthiest landowners in the colony. His son Robert came to Van Diemen's Land in 1825, when he was aged about 18. He soon became a keen and knowledgeable botanist, the first in the colony really, and became acquainted with the British botanist William Hooker. Robert became a close friend of the property manager, public servant and later parliamentarian Ronald Campbell Gunn, and encouraged Gunn in the study of botany. Gunn eventually became the preeminent botanist of Van Diemen's Land, providing invaluable services both to Sir William and to his son Joseph. So what's the point of this preamble? Robert Lawrence acquired a set of early volumes of the preeminent botanical journal, Curtis's Botanical Magazine, from the beginning of its publication in 1786, though the first few volumes that we have are reprints from the 1790s. Lawrence died in 1833. These volumes passed to Gunn, who continued to subscribe to the magazine until 1855. They remained in Gunn's family until 1926, long after his death, when they were sold at auction to Frederick Dugan Bird, a leading Melbourne surgeon and medical administrator who was also an enthusiastic amateur botanist and apparently a book collector. He didn't have long to enjoy them since he died in 1929. This slide and the next one take us from the beginning of the first volume, so the title page, the first illustration and the first description from the first volume, to the end of the last volume in Gunn's set. It's important to note, however, that Curtis's Botanical Magazine is still, after 236 years, being published by the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. What happened to Gunn's set after Bird's death is unknown, until in 2001 they were offered to the Allport Library by the dealer Andrew Isles. The staff at that time, two of whom are in the room today, decided that they would be an appropriate major acquisition to mark the centenary of Federation. In the Allport collection, they joined several important botanical works, including Joseph Booker's Flora Tasmaniae, which is the seminal work of Tasmanian botany, and is dedicated to Ronald Campbell Gunn and William Archer. The copy we have in Allport is Gunn's own copy, which he had presented to his daughter. So yet another nice connection to be made in the collections. So there we have it. 7 books and sets of books whose story will, I hope, be of interest to visitors to the Allport Library. But there are many more stories to be unearthed and told in the library. The task, as Amanda said, has only just begun. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I introduce Leisha Owen.
Leisha is going to do a few things. Finished today, we'll be able to have a look at the books that Tony was talking about in the cases. So we put them out, as Tony said, for today. My goodness, Tony, thank you so much for that. It was just fabulous to hear. Every time you talk, I learn something more. And really, when you think about it, every book is a story, isn't it? There's the book with the information in it. Then there's the story of how it's been in different families, provenance, and that's why reading the dealers' catalogues can be so fascinating. And then you brought us that story, but then you gave us even more. You know, how it's been used. It's just fascinating. really is that those stories behind the books is what is fascinating. And as you just look at them as on the shelves there, they seem to just be rows and rows of
Can I say that Allport did have an example of putting a rare book out on show? This is for Amanda's benefit. My story. And it was by Inigo Jones.
really
The architect.
goodness.
Great Regency architect. And it was on Stonehenge.
God,
And I discovered when I first came that it had been stolen from the table in Bay 1, where it was on display. And that I was really disappointed about, because Inigo Jones at Stonehenge is some of my favourite things. So it does happen. So there's a cautionary tale, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you. But I have to add, while Clifford's busy getting my tech side ready, I have to add that even though we say that all these books are locked up in the cabinets, it is true too that anybody can go to the history room upstairs, and once you've found it on the catalogue, or you've asked a librarian to help you find it on the catalogue, and they identify where it is, and if there's only a copy in the Allport, that copy will go up to you in the history room, and you'll be able to see anything. So absolutely anything. If it's that fragile that it's falling apart, it's probably be sitting in conservation. So it's nice to know that, especially for researchers, and in the history room, they've got all the right conditions to be able to have a look at everything. But the other good thing about Allport is that a lot of the work we've got is duplicated in our Tasmanian heritage collections as well. So always, if a researcher goes to the history room and asks for a title, they will make sure that they get one of the Tasmanian ones before. The Allport will be the last resort. So ours are the most precious. And often in Allport, when I say ours, I mean Allport, ours are sometimes the most precious, but they're often also the ones that are in the best condition, because they were bought as collector's items. And we're always doing that. We're still looking. Just the other day, I bought from Horden for the Allport a folio edition of Mammals of Australia. Now, we've got two other copies in the library collections, but one is just falling apart because it was used so much when it was first published in the 1800s. And the other is in the Crowther collection. So if anybody ever wanted to see that Mammals of Australia, which has got the most beautiful lithographs in it, they will be able to request it from the history room, and they probably won't see the Allport edition, but they'll see the more tattered one. Ready to go? Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, so Clifford has just put our catalogue there. Is that working? Can everyone hear me? Yes, good. So I'm going to now give you a bit of a live show in terms of searching our catalogue. So please interrupt me if there's anything, any questions that you have, or if I'm going too fast, or if there's anything that you don't understand, just interrupt as I'm going along. And I'm not going to be searching specifically for anything. I'm going to try and do a bit of a browse. And as you know, search is very different from a browse. If you go into a shop and you are searching for a pair of black shoes, you'll be only looking for a pair of black shoes. But if you go into a shop and you just browse, you never know what you might find. You never know what you might discover, and you never know how many hours you'll be there delving down. So this is what happens when you browse the library catalogue. You can do it for days on end. So I'm giving you all a warning. This is something that can become quite addictive once you know how. Now, all day long, all of our librarians are living in this catalogue, because absolutely everything that we have in our collections has a catalogue record and is discoverable. And a lot of it is also photographed and images online as well. So I'm going to concentrate on the Allport catalogue, or the Allport collections, specifically Allport Library. We could look at some of the other formats as well. And I might be using some terms like format, which are unfamiliar to you. So do do let me know if there's anything that you need to know. So the first thing you need to know is how to find it. So if you just Google Libraries Tasmania, up will come this website, and there's its full address, libraries.tas.gov.au. So this is the Libraries Tasmania, and of course Allport is part of that. Up on top of each page, you will find this search box ready to go. That's where you can type in any word you want and any search that you would want to do. But I want to take you to show you the Allport pages, and we'll go searching by the Allport pages. I'll just quickly mention that there's other things to look at here. This is a banner that keeps on changing, mostly with our exhibitions or any specific things that are on at the moment. So if you just scroll down, there's another tile here. It says Allport Library and Museum. It couldn't fit in Museum of Fine Arts, so we had to just put museum. So if you click on that, you come to what we call in website terms as the Allport's landing page, as they say. So it will be the page that connects you to all things Allport. But luckily enough, up at the top here still stands up the library catalogue so that you can search at any time. So I want to show you that you can have this information about the Allport. There's our what's on, and if you click on that, you will then go to everything that's advertised there, which is on Eventbrite. So this one, there won't be much there now because there were only 2 others, but I'll quickly show you. So it says it's what's on at the State Library, the Tasmania Archives, and the Allport Museum. And FOTA Talk's still up because it's going to expire at 2 o'clock. So there it was. And if you wanted then to come to this, you would have clicked on that and registered. So that's where you find out what's on. And it's also all the other talks that happen. So these are the Professional Historians Association. So we see Leon Atkinson's coming up next Thursday, so if you want to book for that, you will click on that. So that was on the events, but now I'm going to go back to, so that was through the what's on. So now I'm going to, and we've got the shop, got past exhibitions, so lots of lovely photos and things like that. And for Amanda, there's join the Friends of the Allport down there, yay! And so there it all is. But now let's get on to browsing. First thing is, if you see any little downward arrows like that, explore them. So I'm going to just see what else it says underneath there. Aha, so it says I can search just the library catalogue. I'm not quite sure which library maybe. Are they talking about the Hobart Library, the Lending Library, the Allport Library, what all? You don't need to. You don't need to worry about that. You don't need to think, there's a book in the Allport that I want to, so I'm going to have to try and find the Allport Library there. This is all our collections, yeah. It's all of our lendable and catalogued items. It's the whole of the Tasmanian archives as well. It's the name index. The name index for those researchers is a relatively new one where we have indexed and made discoverable all of the records from common convict records, the births, deaths, and marriages. So if you're ever researching family history or anything like that, that's where you go. You can search our website, but you can also just combine them all and search everything. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit everything. It now says I'm searching everything. And I'm going to shock you now because I'm going to go more than that. I'm not going to put in a search term. I'm just going to hit the search button. Wow. 3 million odd items. That's it. That's everything. That's everything. So now you start getting a feel of what's here in this building, 91 Murray Street, and then around all of our branches as well. So everything came up just at the click. In the old days, of course, you know, the computer would have stopped by now, loading over 3 million items. There's my search results, so you can see how many. So now I'm going to take you to the side here, and it says filters, and this is where you will narrow your search. You'll either narrow it, or you'll start digging in deeper, or looking at some of the ways that you can explore these 3 million items that have come up. So each one has a little plus sign, and if it hasn't, it's got a negative sign there. So a few of them open randomly. So I'm just going to close them all so that you can see. I can now start search, I can filter at least, or narrow to authors and curators, fictions, availability, format, record types, and it just goes on and on. But I'm going to start off because I want to limit it to Allport, because it's all things Allport today. So I'm going, oh, well, I'll limit it to the Allport Library. Click on the plus. Well, comes up with State Library, comes up with State Library, Launceston and Hobart. The reason that it's come up with those is because it's giving you the numbers, and these are the biggest collections. So it's taken them in terms of who's got most. So the most of these 3 million odd items is in the State Library. That is our State Library collection, which is our non-lending collection, which is our Tasmaniana, Tahoe it was called at one stage, Tasmaniana, our heritage collection. It's where by law a copy of absolutely everything that's ever published in Tasmania or about Tasmania comes to that collection.
No, I mean, that only applies to things published in Tasmania.
But we do collect.
We collect
very widely.
Yeah, but they're not
On the whole,
they're not
no,
widely.
not by law. By law, it
Yeah.
is published in, I understand, but we collect
Oh, yes.
about Tasmania, absolutely everything we can as well. And so where's Allport? So the next thing you've got to remember to do is to go view all. So remember, you're looking now for the library, Allport Library. So you view all, and it only showed you a few things that were coming up there, and as I said, it was by a number, by how many. This full list now is giving me absolutely every library that's identified in our catalogue, but it's still a bit difficult to find Allport. So I'm going to sort it by A to Z. Guess where we are.
Right.
And now we can see that of these 3 million odd items, Allport in its library, these books around you, have 9,987. So it's quite nice to start getting a feeling of how much we've got and what it is. So now if I'm going to limit it to that, I'm going to click on Allport, and there's a little two-step here, select. So if you go slowly and you think about what you're doing, you'll find it's telling me now what I've done. It's saying, oh yeah, you have limited it to the Allport Library. See, it's telling me there. I have narrowed my search to the Allport Library. And now, once again, what's come up on this first page has just been by relevance. You can sort further, but only if you come up with less than about 100, maybe it's 1,000, I'm not sure. Probably 100 results. You can only then sort those results. But you can carry on narrowing. You can carry on exploring down this side. So now thinking, all right, we've got Allport Library. Format. Let's look at format. Gosh. So in the Allport Library, there's 4,640 online things, online images, 3,820 books. There's pictures, photographs, all in the library, all classified as Allport Library. So I want to limit it again now to books. Select. And again, it's telling me now, right, you're now looking in the Allport Library and you've just got all the books. So now I'm thinking, okay, so what kind of books do we have in the Allport Library? So I'm going to look in topic. And again, it's giving me a feel of, we've got the most books in the Allport Library, which have the subjects, voyages and travels, as Tony was saying. We've got everything, we've got a very good collection there. We've got pamphlets, we've got Australia discovery and exploration. Well, let's view all our topics. Let's see, what do we have? And there you start seeing the numbers as well. We've got all of our exhibition catalogues there. That's nice to know. We've got voyages around the world, so you're getting sort of subject headings, librarians call them subject headings, they're just called topics, yeah? And you start seeing then, oh, there's 29, not necessarily, not by, but in subject headings. We've got porcelain, quite a lot, actually, that's interesting. Just the bounty of the ship as a topic. And there it goes on, right down to 1 or 2, now we're in the 7 or, you know, less numbers down to just count to see what we've got. Have we got one on anything? Have we got one on anything? Clippings. You can see all the subjects going. Isn't it fascinating? Because this is now just looking at what we've got without having searched. You're only on S. Go on further. Bushrangers, fiction. What are they, Tony? You probably know them.
I think one of them might be.
Let's look. So I had to go there. I picked it. Don't forget, it's the second step here, wasn't there? I'll set myself in the one. Oops. How many two? We've got My Cow, Bushranger van Diemen's Land by Bonwick, and Bushranger van Diemen's Land by Charles Reed. Okay, that is 1873. Well, let's have a look at this. So again, I have now clicked on an item. I've now got the one item. It's My Cow, the Bushranger van Diemen's Land by James Bonwick. There's the author. If I clicked on that, I get all of James Bonwick's other books. It tells me the publication and the date when it was published, tells me how big it is. Very important for people looking for things on the shelves. It's got some more subject headings that I could click on and then go further. And then, not that you have to ever think about this, because the whole system works for either you're going to be in the history room requesting something, or if you want to put something on hold, if you're in the lending library, you don't have to worry where it is in our library. You're very lucky we've got the system that you could just put a hold on it and it'll come from wherever it is in Tasmania. But not, of course, Allport or Tasmania or any of the books that are not lending books, because that's the thing that confuses some people about our library system. We are lending and we state libraries. We have that double function, which you don't find in the state as much. ACT, you have that, and in Melbourne, you often get a few libraries that have branches. But Tasmania is the only state where we have the lending library and the state library as one, in the Department of Education as one state-funded body, not like the lending libraries interstate, which are normally council or local government funded. So you can see down here that we have that in our Allport stack. So it's probably down there with the no, it's in there. 820s. Here's where Tony's put up his sign.
Where Mrs. Allport's.
Where Mrs. Allport's are and Richard Flanagan's are. So it's sitting there in its Dewey. But if somebody was in the history room wanting it, they would get one of these copies, TAS stack copies, state library copies. Launceston Library have a little reference collection, and that's there too. But you wouldn't be able to put a hold on any of these. It would soon tell you, no, they're all only reference copies. You need to go to the library and see them there. But if I did try and place a hold, it would come up and tell me that I couldn't. So that's good too. Now, one other thing just to show you is you've got this button here. So we were in this details, more about this item. And this one doesn't have as much information as randomly updated it's quite nice. It's 36 pages of advertisements, and that's listed in Ferguson, which Tony was talking about.
And you should have the Ferguson number.
It should.
Unique to
And we are always improving. So after this talk, I will go down it. I'll send an email to Tara in cataloguing, and I'll say, heritage. So we're always making changes. We're always finding typos. We're always adding information. Because we just bought this new copy of Mammals of Australia by Creft. Our other copies, we looked at them and we thought we can definitely add some more information to these, and it will go on this more about the site. And so that, you know, for the person who's just looking, it's not there, but more about the site, it will often have some really interesting information. And this is the one Tony likes. He likes Library View, which gives you the everything, just in line numbers. These are codes that librarians use that have meaning. Worry you with those, but you can see every line there is an index field. That means that it's searchable and you can collate them all together, and it's finding it's all very clever.
But confusingly, not every line in that necessarily appears in the details.
Not at all. In fact, it doesn't. In fact,
So you can find yourself looking at a record like that and saying,
Yeah.
why did that come up?
Yes, that's
My
right.
search.
You're right.
It's because the search has been on the Library View.
It's which is good too when it comes up, because you would never have found that otherwise. So yes, it indexes even the notes. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Not all of them.
As many as we can get there.
Particularly when you're cataloguing painting.
Yes, well, we are. There's two different things there. We've got records which are just linked to an online image, and then we've got records that are linked to the catalogue record of the actual item that the image was out of. It does get a bit confusing, but when you see, I'll just go back to our.
Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted.
No, not at all. I asked to interrupt. It's good. We just won't go into anything that's too complicated. I want to give you confidence and so you can go and explore on your own. There's a lot of other things to explore here. There are years. Now, for instance, I'm now limited to the bush rangers, but I don't want to anymore. But instead of doing my search all over again, I'll just get rid of that and go one step back to, and I can see now what I've done still. So it's all quite, if you go slowly, it's very manageable. Even though you're dealing with 3,820 records. We haven't even really been into them except for that bush ranger one. We've been sitting in this column here. What other thing is interesting in the well, let's go and look at an image. We view all and we view online. It's not image online, it's image online. That's what I wanted. And select it. It's got this beautiful Ferdinand Bauer, which you can view online. Oh no, I meant to say, Curtis Botanical Magazine is now available on Overdrive. Yes, some of the early ones too. So you search that, and you will see you can get it on Libby and have a look at those beautiful illustrations, zoom in on them. And
can I interrupt there and say something that all of the images I used from Curtis and from Juddin's Natural History came from a wonderful website called the Biodiversity Heritage Library, which is online and has the most extraordinary. Jules, what number did I get up to the other day when I pushed on? They've got something like 60 million items on their catalogue that are being digitised. And I found the entire Curtis Botanical Magazine and the entire Jardin's Natural History Library. And I can look at every page in every book, and I need the images to just copy and paste the images into my PowerPoint. Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's right.
Again, I'm sorry.
Biodiversity Heritage Library.
Actually, it's one of the Google projects, I think, so that they were digitised, and now you can find them in
Yeah,
various
the ones I
places.
was using, the Curator,
That's right.
actually came from the State Library of Missouri.
That's right.
But there are a lot of Australian-based images on
Yeah.
Biodiversity Heritage
Yeah.
Library. Sorry.
That's right. So I'm going to just click on the Vernon bar, and then you'll see here, on the actual, as you scroll down, I bet there's much more here about the site, and yeah, he has nice notes. So, again, index in with the page number, Tony.
No, the
Pretty
item,
better now.
item number.
Item number, at least, yes.
Yeah.
Contents, if there's been electronic resources, so that's quite nice to know. So go back to the detail. You scroll down, the whole book has been digitized. So you get it here, but if you really want to look at it properly, you click on download copy. Right, so that will then, I'm not going to do it now, but you can have a quick look through here and say, oh, well, I just want to go to this one. And then it'll bring up that page. But if you want to look through the whole thing and even save it to your desktop or look at it another day or whatever, you then download the copy. And you obviously now it's you can actually screen around these undownloaded ones. So they're quite good anyway. But the best way to do that with the images is to download the copy. And that's for all of our images. And of course, the Allport, I mean, we're concentrating on the library, but of course, the Allport has so many of our images, which are in the Colonial Gallery. All of our prints have been put online, just about all of them. All of our fine arts pictures are online, and then a lot of books as well have been digitized as well. I think that's all I've got. Has anybody got any questions?
No, now we're going to do two things, all of us. We're going to look at the panels, which we're so proud of. In their right places here, the books they belong to. And we're going to look at these, okay, say something. But we're also going to go and I am going to play on the catalogue. Because I wasn't confident. I'll be completely honest, I was not confident. And that's just helped me immensely. Leisha, thank you very much. And thank you to Tony. And now all that remains for me to do is to launch officially our beautiful
It's designed for us by Julie Hawkins from Graphic Design.
Yes.
And a fabulous job.
Yes.
And can I say thank you very much to the Friends for wonderful effort for getting that done.
And we're going to continue, rest assured. So thank you very much for coming. Have a good look now. I now know those blue ones are really hard to read the spines of, but I now know who they are, which is a start. So that's really also really good. And the nettleshoots and the house springer on the back corner, I think they're fabulous. House spring, definitely. Like a piece of house springs.
Would Allport accept donations of nettle shoes? Or is that a collection closed?
Would you have accepted
I'll
that?
take that one on notice, Marion.
Thank you everyone for coming and see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, but I
Oh,
didn't. Are you